Welcome back to Jersey Matters. We continue our conversation now with Congressman Andy Kim, Democrat from the 3rd Congressional District in New Jersey. I hear on the national news them constantly talking about freshman Democrats in Republican districts or in swing districts. And they're the key on this impeachment vote. And that's what Nancy Pelosi is worried about. And when I hear them talk about that, I think about you. That they're talking about you. Are you feeling any pressure from the Democratic Party? Are you feeling, if not from the Democratic Party, but the weight of history?
Well, for me, the only people that I take my cues from are the people of Burlington County and Ocean County. They're my bosses, and I'm going to do everything I can to try to lift up their voices in Congress. I'm somebody that has worked in public service my whole career. I worked at the Pentagon, at the State Department as a civilian in diplomacy and other issues of national security. 3 times in my life I've sworn an oath to be able to protect and serve our Constitution. So every day I go into work, I feel the weight of the Constitution, I feel the weight of the work that we do. And there's not a day that goes by where I don't recognize that I work a job whose job description is written in the Constitution of the United States. And I take that duty very seriously.
When you say my constituents are my bosses, you go back to a conflict that goes all the way back to the Declaration of Independence. Do I vote my conscience? Do I vote my constituents? When you say that, does that mean that if your constituents, if we get to an impeachment vote, if there are articles of impeachment, that you're going to take your cue from your constituents on that vote?
Well, I always take my cue from the
If they want it, you'll vote for it.
But there's no perfect science to know exactly what 750,000 people are wanting. That's why I do town halls. We've done 13 town halls in about 10 months. We're engaged all across the district. I'm trying to do everything I can to get a pulse of the district. And I just want to hear from everybody, whether they agree or disagree with some of the things I've been doing. I need to hear that. Now, I'm also someone that was elected by them because they understand my background. They understand that I'm someone who worked under both Democrats and Republicans in national security. And so, I'm going to draw upon my experience and the work that I've done to help inform the way that I'm going to move forward on this issue and many other issues that I have to confront.
With that experience, when you heard that phone call with the president of Turkey, what was your takeaway?
Well, I was alarmed. I was alarmed in the same way that when I hear that there's a active duty lieutenant colonel in the Army who works at the White House, someone who has a Purple Heart, and he works at the White House as the director overseeing the Ukraine portfolio, a director at the National Security Council, which was the same level job I had at the White House National Security Council. If that gentleman, if that lieutenant colonel is concerned about that call that he listened to, that raises concerns with me too. And I think it merits us digging into this more and trying to figure out and get to the bottom of it and figure out the truth for the American people, what happened.
As an advisor who used to be in Afghanistan for both Generals Petraeus and John Allen, were you involved in those type of phone calls in the past?
I have been involved in phone calls. When I worked at the White House National Security Council, I've spent time in the Oval Office listening in on those calls. I've often briefed the president before those calls. When I was out in Afghanistan working under 4-star commanders, I was certainly engaged in a lot of high-level conversations, including with the White House. So I've seen what is at stake. I understand the type of need to ensure that our national security is not something that even is remotely considered to be partisan politics.
Is that phone call on its face, through the transcript, impeachable?
Well, look, we need to look at the broader picture and I think that a lot of these other witnesses and others that are filling out the details of what were the conversations before that phone call, what was happening after that phone call. You need to look at the big picture. I mean, look, the issue of engaging with oversight, especially over the President of the United States, is such an enormous matter. It can't be anything done in any sort of way that looks like, again, it's political. This needs to be a very thorough process and one that we need to take very seriously. And hearing from that lieutenant colonel and other people at the White House and in other jobs is important to fill out the details.
We're still very early in the process. There's going to be public hearings, so I understand it's difficult to answer these questions at this point.
That's right.
Let's talk about Afghanistan for 1 minute, because you just came back. You used to work there. I think a lot of Americans ask the question, why are we still there at all? I know we only have 13,000 troops, but that's 13,000 families with men and women overseas. When do you see a way out?
Well, I asked these same questions. You're right. I worked in Afghanistan. I worked in Kabul at a military base 8 years ago. And I was just in Afghanistan a couple weeks ago. In fact, I visited that same military base that I worked at. I was actually briefed in the room that I used to work within. I met with Americans, service members there who telling me it was their 6th or 7th or 8th tour in Afghanistan. I also met with several young service members that couldn't have been much older than my 4-year-old baby boy on September 11th. And they've known nothing but a nation at war in Afghanistan. We need to find real solutions to this. I did a town hall when I came back on this because it's not in the news. It's not something that I hear about enough on Capitol Hill. We can't just ignore our way out of this war. We have to confront the tough decisions, but we have to also do it in a responsible way. We've seen the dangers of just cutting and running when we saw what happened with Turkey and Syria over the last month. That we, it certainly puts our.
In this trip, you also went to Turkey. And
I went to Turkey. I went to Turkey, and I worked previously as an expert on the counter ISIS fight. I know full well the threat that we face in terrorism. I know full well that the actions that the president took with regards to Turkey and Syria are damaging to our national security, puts our partners at risks, gives ISIS another chance at life. And these are the types of things that we need to worry about when it comes to what is this president going to do, or what is our country going to do with regards to Afghanistan.
When you talk about Afghanistan and something should be done, does that mean we should pull out? And if so, can't Congress have a role in that?
Well, we don't want to just pull out haphazardly in the same way that we saw in Syria and Turkey. There needs to be a plan.
But it has to end, right?
It needs to end. But we also need to recognize and remember what it was that brought us there to start with, which was the attack on September 11th that was planned and plotted from that land, when we still have legitimate and real terrorism threats emanating from that region. We need to make sure that we don't find ourselves right back where we started. There's, again, no easy solutions to this, but the president's initial negotiations with the Taliban I thought was a bad path to go down. I think that we should be engaging more broadly with the Afghan government and civil society. I think we should really press for a full comprehensive ceasefire. I know it's going to be hard to get, but every aspect of this is going to be hard to get. But we owe it to the American people and our service members to be able to do this right, bring them home as quickly as possible, and be able to have America move on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
As always for your time, I really appreciate it. Congressman Andy Kim, 3rd Congressional District in New Jersey. Jersey Matters continues right after this. Still to come, we had an election this week. A recap next.